The LMT 9-inch 300 blackout PDW, and this is what we're gonna go into next. But before we do, let's go ahead and talk about our channel sponsor, Tag Firearms, where you can get some of the best firearms from manufacturers like LMT, Noveske, Knight's Armament, B&T, and plenty more. All right, guys, we're gonna get into this LMT PDW. This is about a 9.5, 9¼ inch barrel. This is an 8¼ inch MLC, I believe, upper. It's more or less a baby spec war. As you notice on there, it does not have the QV swivels on the front anymore, and it kind of has a little bit wider diameter inside of there. I think they did that mainly to make sure that when you guys put on accessories and stuff with M-LOK, you don't have to take the barrel out to change things in here and there. I never had that issue, but I guess people did have that issue. So they have a few flavors of the PDW. They have them with the QD, they have them without the QD, and this one is, like I said, more of a baby spec war upper that I know of. This is the 9¼ inch barrel, and they don't make a 5.56 barrel for it, which would be dope because I think a 9.5 inch 5.56 wouldn't be a bad way to go. But this one is a 300 blackout. So my thoughts on this: 300 blackout is one of those rounds that was kind of custom tuned and tailored to be ran out of short barrel configurations and be quiet. The issue for 300 blackout with me is that even if you make the gun light, once you add a mag, especially subsonic, the weight of the whole system goes up, and that is definitely the same case with the LMT. So LMT likes to use thicker profile barrels. LMT's kind of like main directive with what they do is to sell to military and law enforcement. With that being said, they tend to stick around medium to heavy profile type barrels because of heat mitigation and everything else. But you do feel that in the system, with it also being a quick change barrels system and everything else. All the extra accoutrements do add up, you know, ounces equal pounds type deal. So it does feel a little bit heavier, kind of akin to like an MCX in the same barrel length and configuration. So there's not too much difference in that, and that is the DI setup. Now, if I added the piston, it obviously add a little bit more weight. The things I like about the system is the fact that, I mean, you're in that sweet spot, that niche, that 9-inch area. 9.5 inch 300 blackout gets some of the best ballistics out of that cartridge without sacrificing, you know, length and everything else, without getting too long or too short. You do get a lot of good decibel readings out of that as well. I have not ran that suppressed. Don't plan on it just because with my one arm situation, it makes it kind of hard. And like I said, 300 blackout, those things tend to swell up pretty quick. The one thing I will say about LMT is I do like their lowers. The design they do on the lowers is really good. I mean, they're very much the same, very comparable to Knight's. LMT did provide a lot of this stuff for me. They provided a additional lower, they provided the uppers, the barrels, and a PDW stock for the lower. So with that stock, it is not on there, and some of this content you will notice, it makes it very hard for me to run it. It is very short. I mean, they have shortened that significantly to a point to where you need to run a specific buffer and a bolt to run that system. It just makes it really tough for me to run it on camera and to test it. So I ran my normal setup with my SBRs just to kind of give me more length to pull, but we will go into that later on. One thing I will say about that as well is the recoil impulse does change because you're changing the system as far as like the bolt and everything else. So we'll definitely have to touch base with that on a later video. But my closing thoughts on this: would I go after this if I saw it? So to my knowledge, they're not going to make too many of these uppers in that setup. So these are actually pretty rare setups. If you happen to see one, jump on one. They're not going to last. If you think spec wars are rare, those are going to be even more rare. Would I say that it's worth it? I don't mind 300 blackout. The one thing that bothers me a little bit is the weight, but a 9-inch 300 blackout setup is kind of like you're hitting that sweet spot. You got really good ballistics out of that and everything else. You get a little bit longer than that, and I'm not really a big fan of that in 300 blackout. 9.5, you're kind of in that sweet spot. This isn't too heavy, and it has pretty flat recoil impulse without putting on an additional muzzle brake or anything else. So I would say it's a pretty good to go system. But outside of that, I mean, there's not much else more I can say about the LMT. I mean, it's a rock solid system. They're really built for the end user that is kicking doors. And as far as I'm concerned, my true opinion, them and maybe two other companies are at the top of the list as far as tier levels for ARs. Knights, LMT, and I don't know, one day I'll find a third one to be in there, but until that day comes, it's kind of those two that are kind of on the top as far as ARs go. All right, guys, that's going to wrap things up for this time. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time on QRC.